welcome to Two Words Wolf Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. For the first time, we're recording Sunday night, and the Wolves got some help on a day that they didn't play basketball. So that's very unusual, but that puts us in a good mood. But I will say, amongst all the March Madness going on right now, we just had the women's UConn basketball team that won the championship today. I think the men play tomorrow. Now, I usually don't watch a lot of college basketball just because I have a disdain for the NCAA and a lot of that. I've been trying to shake myself out of it though because I have to realize that the Wolves do have a first round pick, so there actually is some reason to watch some college games for me. And so, I was looking at some of the players from the recent games, and I was watching that crazy Houston Duke game, and I was like, man, if the Wolves ended up drafting like LJ Cryer, who I think is a leading scorer for University of Houston, I think that'd be great for the Wolves because every time he hit a three, they could play a riff from When Doves Cry in Target Center for LJ Cryer. That would be pretty sick. But that's about as far as I know in terms of prospects and deep in that. But overall, yeah, I'm doing good. What about you, Ryan? How are you doing this Sunday night?
Good. Good to see the Minnesotan Paige Beckers take down the title. I know she's had an up and down career with the injuries and stuff. So that was really cool to see from a Minnesota perspective. And we'll put together our fan fiction ways for the Lynx to be able to get her. I don't think that's actually realistic, but maybe they'll try the Lindsay Whalen of have her play for another franchise for a while and then come home.
Well, the Dallas Wings are a franchise that is really, really mismanaged. So if there's any franchise out there that could screw it up, it could be the Dallas Wings. But yeah, I mean, definitely shout out to Paige as well too. I know she's really big, for the Minnesota demographic over there. But for those of you that don't really know, I mean, she's had a really, really rough, handful of years at UConn. Not personally in terms of like her play on the court, but just with injuries and off the court stuff. And if any of you know more about that or have been following the storylines, I mean, it was just it's hard not to get moved to see her in tears in Gino Auriemma's arms there at the end because it's so much that she's had to endure, overcome, everything like that. So huge shout out to Paige.
Yeah, great to see. And shifting back to the NBA, but like you mentioned, the Wolves got some help. We'll talk about the standings kind of closer to the end of the show, but Denver lost their fourth straight. They're a mess. I saw that Mike Malone said that they're hopeful or that Murray can possibly return for the playoffs, and what I heard is that he might not. Like that's what I heard from that quote. It's like that's not great in Denver land, and the Warriors finally lost the game to the Houston Rockets, so we have a 5-way tie in the loss column for fourth place. So a lot to be determined. We'll go over the tiebreakers at the end of the show. I'm always into the tiebreakers because they always seem to end up mattering. If you remember last year, the Wolves had the individual tiebreakers with the Thunder and Nuggets, but they came out second in the total tiebreaker of the 3-way tie. So kind of similar vibes tonight where the Wolves come into the night, the 6th seed, a team above them loses. And because of tiebreakers, they're now the 7th seed if the season ends today. And if you only look at the loss column, they're the 4th seed. So fun stuff, but I think we'll kind of focus on the Wolves here because as much as you like scoreboard watching, the Wolves making out of the play-in wise and standings wise, it's going to be on them the rest of the year. And they played last night or Saturday night, and they got a win. It was that it took an Anthony Edwards heat check and a crazy shot at the end, of fadeaway, one-legged, whatever the heck that was, to put it away. Yeah, really two unimpressive wins. The Brooklyn game 2 nights prior, a little bit less so. They kind of they were never really in danger of losing the game. Kind of like unlike Philly, where there was a little bit of nerves at that one, but 2 tanking teams, they get 2 tanking wins. Not necessarily the most inspiring of wins, but we'll start with Howl or Foul. The Wolves' energy and effort issues will be an issue in the postseason. What do you think?
I'm going foul for this one. The reason I'm going foul is how many times this season, even if you just think about it with this iteration of teams, how many games against top competition or playoff teams the Wolves come out with just like terrible energy, just like they do against these like bottom feeders. And I feel like you can count them on one hand. I mean, there was a game against Cleveland that comes to mind where they absolutely got crushed. There was a game against the Thunder where they ended up getting crushed, but I mean, they were largely in a chance to win that game. I think Mike Conley hit 3 threes in a row, and the Wolves had a huge lead in the second half, and they kind of blew it afterwards. But anyways, yeah, my point is that as much as we don't want to say like, oh well, it's just a matter of whether or not the team is trying and how much they care about who's across lining up across from them. It does matter apparently for this Wolves team, and I always kind of go back to that same quote that Finch has said multiple times throughout the seasons, that we have a very emotional team. And I think that comes to not just how they perform individually as players, but also when they're looking across to see who they're playing. Because when they're seeing like, okay, well, I'm playing against you have Jared Butler out there, and then you have Quentin Grimes, who's apparently taking lessons from Obi Toppin. I mean, I was getting PTSD every time Quentin Grimes was just clanking in threes there at the end. Anything, he was swishing threes there at the end from everywhere, contested all over. And I think that's the problem with the Wolves, that they're not getting up for those games. And as much as we want them to, there's not that much time. I mean, they have what, two more games against tanking teams here, so those will that'll be seen how the Wolves perform in that, because that will very much matter in terms of their final seeding and standings. But for the most part, the Wolves have shown that, yeah, they're just not able to do that, at least not right now. So going into playoffs, like I said, I said this in a previous episode as well too. They're going to play up to whoever it is that it is, whether it's the Nuggets again, whether it's the Grizzlies, or whether it's the Rockets, or whoever it is that they match up against. So yeah, I think it's just a thing against the regular season bottom feeder teams, and it's just kind of like, all right, well, I'll try what I need to. So what about you, Ryan? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Foul on it being an issue in the postseason, and honestly, there's not much I'm really taking away like on court wise from these last few games. I kind of feel like we have a good sense of what this team is. You kind of pointed it out, like they're just not gonna have that energy against worse teams, or at least that energy is gonna come inconsistently game to game. If this were halfway through the season, I'd be extremely worried about it because they'd have X number of games against bad teams. They only have 2 games against tanking teams left. Yes, like those will be incredibly important games, but I do feel like the team will at least acknowledge like there will be clear stakes to those games. The back to back, they have a back to back with Brooklyn, who's also on a back to back, so maybe that's a tough game. Utah, we'll see if they're even trying the last game of the season, but yeah, I just don't view it as an issue in the playoffs, basically for all the reasons that you said. And ultimately, at this point in the season, I'm not really worried about, as long as they're getting wins, I'm not really worried about the intricacies. It's not that a X player playing bad isn't a bad thing, or whoever else playing good like Rudy isn't a good thing. It's just that I'm kind of, their issues are what their issues are, their strengths are what their strengths are, and it's going to come down to how they execute that and which team they get and how the matchups play out, which makes it easier or harder to execute all of those things. So it's for better or worse, it's about results. They got two playoff teams left, one of which against Memphis, which will be incredibly important. It's hard to see them missing the playoffs if they do win that Memphis game. And if they lose both of these hard games, or really if they lose 2 more games the rest of the way, they're going to need a lot of help to get out of the play-in tournament. But even if they do end up in the play-in tournament, which is unlikely in the sense that I would put it below 50%, ultimately they just have to win 1 game, and they're the 7th seed, and they have as good of a chance as winning a playoff round or 2 as anyone, I would say.
Yeah, just bubble wrap Ant for whatever you can for the rest of this regular season. I mean, keep Jordy Fernandez away
Yeah.
from Ant's legs. I mean, that was just like I want to say it's a freak accident, but it's also one of those. And he was kind of criticized for this. I know he apologized later on, but after the game. But I mean, what was he doing? Like, you're walking behind a player, slowly behind a player, kind of thing, who's obviously that has no idea what's going on behind him because he just shot a 3-point shot. So that was incredibly dangerous. And I like Jordy Fernandez, but yeah, hopefully again he knows the role this time, and he just protects Ant as much as he can. But I'll say this as well too. We'll talk about Rudy Gobert a little bit more extended in this episode. But I mean, Rudy has just been playing incredibly at a level that I feel like we've never seen him play at. We've seen him be consistent. We've seen him dominate the defensive end, but the box score numbers that he's put up. I mean, the Wolves broadcast put this up before the Sixers game, where he is only trailing Wilt Chamberlain in this like crazy stat of, I think it's like 20 points and 15 rebounds on more than 90% field goal percentage or something like that. How many games? And later that game, that Sixers game, he does it again. And so we talked about this in the past when we first made the Rudy Gobert trade, or at least the Wolves Nation has talked about this, that Rudy's kind of that ultimate floor raiser. Like, these games, like, he just will not allow them to lose because he's bigger, he's more athletic, and he has a better grasp of defense playing against these, quite frankly, G League and third string players on the other side of the court, and so he dominates them, and he's continuing to do that. So thankfully that we do have him, and he is healthy. I do also want to say, Ryan, I don't know if we're going to talk about this much more later, but there were so many highlight plays in that Sixers game as well, too. I mean, everyone knows about Ant's three-pointer at the end. Everyone knows about Ant's huge dunk that he had at Mbona, but he had a huge dunk in the second half as well, too. Nikhil also had that Michael Jordan-esque layup in the fast break. He went up with one hand, and they switched it to his left hand and finished. There were a lot of even Rudy Gobert at the end, I think he had that offensive rebound. We just kind of plucked it out of the sky over the defender and then went for a reverse jam and just kind of flex on them. There were so many highlights that I feel like you could have done a whole top 10 based on that game alone. And granted, I know what type of competition they were up against, but it was fun to see. There was at least a lot of entertaining moments for sure.
Yeah, it's been, I wouldn't say fun, but it's been. I mean, they're on a 5-game winning streak. They've won. What are they? 15-3 in their last 18 games. Like, I know there's been frustrating losses. The 2 at home to Indiana and New Orleans are obviously really costly right now, but ultimately they're playing good enough basketball to win. They're rattling off wins like they should be. Obviously, they got 2 more games that in a vacuum wouldn't be bad losses. Assuming people are playing in these games against Milwaukee and Memphis, but yeah, they just need to. There's just so little time left. They got to take care of business. But speaking about energy, one player that maybe one of the biggest culprits for kind of lack of energy, Jaden McDaniels, shot 9 of 21 from 2 and 0 of 8 from 3 these last 3 games. Just kind of, I would say he's been one of the bigger culprits in terms of playing down to opponent. We've seen him play so fantastically, one of the best players on the court at times, and seen him just be kind of out of it. So Leo, holler foul. It's just a matter of time for Jaden to find his rhythm again.
I'm going to say foul for this. And the reason I'm saying foul for it's just a matter of time is because Jaden so far in his career, I mean, he's in his fifth year now, where we haven't seen at least an entire season of him playing this way. I feel like we've gotten accustomed to seeing that this calendar year of 2025 from January all the way through now, or at least through most of March, he was playing really, really well with an aggression, both ends of the court, really. And aside from this 3-month run, like he hasn't shown more of that. So until he does shoot that, I mean, we need to believe that, okay, well, this is what he is. Now, I'm hopeful that it's a matter of time, but I wouldn't say that I think it's just a matter of time. We've seen him in the past, in previous seasons, he'll get hot from perimeter. It's like, okay, well, Jaden's now a shooter. It's like, all right, we've seen just bursts of it, but I really would like to see him get out of his own head. Again, I go back to that emotion quote or the over emotional players on our team quote by Finch. Jaden has to be near the top of the list in terms of how much he allows himself to mentally get taken out of the game. He's missing some shots. You see him kind of drop his head. He's slapping his hands together. And like, that's fine. But if you're letting that, you're seeing that live in his head, and he's not moving on to the next play where it's kind of like, shoot, now I'm going to play overly aggressive before the team crosses half court and pick up a lazy foul. And yeah, like you said, maybe it's a matter of playing down to the competition, but he really needs to fix that because, again, there's going to be so many ebbs and flows. And it's to get really physical in the playoffs. And I think there is a part of him, and I think Dane Moore talks about this before, where he has that little bit of FU in him in his game, and that should be advantageous for the Wolves, but he really needs to harness that. So I would love to see him and Naz Reid, to be honest, both kind of like not allow themselves to get taken out of the game. I know that once Ant hit that 3 at the end of the game, there was a fan view of the shot in Philadelphia in the arena. I think NBA social media posted a video of it. Ant hits that shot, and you show the camera, the perspective is from a fan behind the Wolves bench, and you see the Wolves bench kind of go crazy, and Naz Reid just kind of standing there with his arms crossed, like kind of no reaction. And I'm not going to sit here and play armchair psychiatrist about it, but if you had to wonder, well, why wasn't Naz like more emotive about it or whatever? We've seen him get excited, for his teammates before. It's right because Naz had a pretty bad game, especially near the end too. He started well in the first half, and he had a really poor second half, and he, similar to Jaden, allows himself to get affected. Like, oh man, I'm missing some shots I should be making, and then he just gets madder and madder, and then just kind of spirals out. So yeah, it's a foul for me. But what about you? What would you say is it a matter of time before Jaden finds his rhythm?
Yeah, speaking on the Nas point for a little bit, I just think it's kind of anytime you're reading into people's body language like that, like, should he be more excited about what is kind of a game winner? Sure. But ultimately, like, I feel like there's the same set of people are also the type of people like, what are you celebrating? You guys played like terrible. So it's just like, I don't Also, we couldn't see his face. Maybe like his face had a different reaction. I don't know. I just don't personally like the body language doctor stuff. Just because like we don't know what's going through someone's head, and even if he was like whatever worst case scenario he has going on in his head, we're all human, and like the next day, like just all that could just be gone. Like I don't know. That type of stuff I try not to read into. But as far as Jaden, I'm gonna go how that he will kind of find his rhythm, or at least the recent stretch doesn't make it any less likely that he'll find it, in the sense of he's kind of been an up and down player this year, at least offensively, finding ways to be successful offensively. Then the next game he's not doing that as well. And I just think that'll carry over to the playoffs. And I mean, last playoffs he was fantastic. I mean, him and Carl in that game 7 in Denver were their two best players for the first, I don't know, 3/4 of the game, until Ant brought him home down the stretch of that game. And of course, Rudy's beautiful fadeaway jumper in that game. Yeah, I just kind of goes back to my earlier point. They're playing down to their opponent. Is that good? No. Is it worrisome for the last 2 games of the season? Maybe. But I think if you're trying to, and this is not good for people that write and talk about this team, but like, especially against the tanking teams, if you're going to try to take away like playoff stuff from these games, I think you're going to kind of get misguided. Now, if they play a full strength Milwaukee team and stuff comes up, that might make more sense. And certainly like Memphis, who is another playoff team, a team that you could theoretically play in the playoffs, like that's something I think that is worth taking away. But the fact that Quentin Grimes went nuts and Jaden had a bad game against Philly, I just have a hard time like putting too much stock into that kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair, and I'm not going to argue against that. I will say that I would love to see Nas really get out of this funk, like you said before the playoffs, because he's shown how important he is to us when it comes to playing against these high level teams. And I mean, if you look at his game log again, I mean, we're just box score looking right now, but at least I am. I mean, he had a 20-point game against a team recently here. He had 20 points against the Pacers in a loss. He had a 15-point game against the Pelicans, who were, that's a game that we blew them out. And then a 20-point game in another loss against the Pacers before that. But it's mattered outside of that. It's a bunch of single-digit scoring games. And again, I know scoring's not everything, but Nas, for all the talent that he has, he's very much a scorer. And if he's not scoring, then, he's usually not a plus defender either. So, I would definitely like to see him get out of this funk, as well as Jaden. But I think speaking of people or players in a funk, the Sixers game, as we all know, went down to the final clutch time situation again, somehow, with Quentin Grimes going off and hitting all these crazy threes. And it came out to a final possession where Finch had to call a timeout and draw up a play with somewhere upwards of, I think, 14 seconds left in the game, with, I think, 7 on the shot clock. And as a lot of fans were kind of had the timeout to go on social media and comment and post about it, I jokingly posted about how Finch is probably cooking up a brilliant out of timeout play from the sideline, and instead it goes to Anthony Edwards, or it goes to Rudy Gobert, and back to Anthony Edwards, who's an inbounder. He gets immediately double teamed in the corner, and pivots, takes a 1-pound dribble and goes up, hits a fading 3-pointer, and luckily hits a shot. But for all intents and purposes, it was not a great play or a great shot that was generated there. So, how or foul for our third topic here? Clutch time play calls are Finch's Achilles heel.
I'm gonna go foul. I'm not gonna argue that his play calls have been good this year. Late in games, they have not. He admit that and has admitted that himself. But I think it's kind of one of the things is like there was a play against Memphis, I believe, earlier in the year where Ant basically went rogue. Finch called something basically for Mike, and Ant went rogue. Because he didn't talk to the media, we couldn't tell if we didn't know why that happened. We still don't know why that happened, and obviously it's been months, so it's not worth asking him about it at this point. But like my thing with that play was like, did he feel like the play had broken down? So like he had to go, because like basically what happened is they were supposed to inbound the ball to someone else, and he went and got the ball.
Right.
And it was like at the time it was like, well, did Ant feel, because like at a certain point, like you run a play, it breaks down, you got to go get the ball. And so I don't know if it was that or if he just went completely rogue, or more likely somewhere in the middle, a mix of the two. But like that's like the players have to execute the plays that are run, and I'm not sure like the players are doing a great job necessarily of executing these. But like my big thing with that Philly game is like the offense like was scoring down the stretch of that game. Like Philly had gotten it close before the last couple minutes, and some of it was like broken plays, I guess, but like the other stuff was just like flow of the offense. Mike sets a nice screen, Ant walks into a 3-pointer that he's been making all season, like that type of stuff. It did look better, and the Denver game's probably a bad example because that was a a crap shoot of a game, but like they're starting to win close games. And that's part of like the Wolves have been bad in clutch games. Obviously, a lot of that, or probably most of that, is self-inflicted, but also some of that is luck. Is always a bad word to use, but like bad variance or bad whatever. Like there was likely going to be like a regression to the mean in the sense of, yeah, you can play bad in clutch time, but sometimes you just like you had a 3-point lead, you played bad, and you just end up hitting a dumb shot and you win. Like the Wolves have just had the only other game that like falls into that category is like the Randall buzzer beater against Phoenix way earlier in the year. Like that was just kind of not sure they played well down the stretch of that game, but they got the ball back and Randall hit a tough shot and you win a ball game. Like I guess the Denver game recently probably falls into that category too. Not a made shot, but a brick layup and a lucky foul call. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly not been something that like really for multiple years the late game offense has been poor. But like Achilles heel, I think is like a bit over the top for me in the sense of I do think like the who is on the roster and like the execution of the roster are as big of factors in it as Finch himself. What do you think?
I'm going Howell. That I think it is his Achilles heel, and I think you bring up a lot of valid points. So before I get into mine, I mean, I do want to say that I agree with a lot of what you said. It is on the players to really execute the plays there. And again, you think about a lot of the great game winners that we've seen, out of timeout situations in NBA history. I mean, I think about one that was, I forgot what year it was, but it was one of Damian Lillard's first game winners that he hit against the Rockets in overtime to win their first playoff series and win in a long time. And that was a play as well too that Dame, has broken down many times, saying that the play wasn't drawn up for that, but I saw something develop, and I, when it gets to grain, I told the inbounder like, hey, like I'm gonna be open, like hit me, right? I even think about like Reggie Miller hitting, a huge three over the Bulls one year as well too. It was a broken play as well too, where he said, hey, I'm gonna shove Michael Jordan as hard as I can and get the ball back and shoot a three, and that's what he did. And so, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now, with all that said, the reason I say Howell is because I have a very high standard for how good of a coach I think Chris Finch is. I think he's a really, really good coach. And I think if there's one area that he's kind of been flawed at, the most, at least, that's kind of turned its head is, these clutch time situations. And as much as we want to say that the players are going rogue or maybe they're not running the plays well, he's a coach. So he's got to get up, he's got to draw up a play the players are going to want to play, the players are going to want to follow, or he's got to practice them a little bit more. He's got to get them to understand a little bit more, like, hey, look, our record is bad. We need to adjust, like just kind of going rogue. So yeah, again, I agree there is a little bit of a middle ground about it. So either he's terrible at drawing up plays or he's terrible at getting his players to buy into the plays. And so if it's the latter, then like I said, you need to design something that you think, okay, well, everyone's to be okay running this or comfortable running it, where you don't have accidentally inbounding the ball in this type of situation, or accidentally getting a situation where he's getting double, he dribbles off his foot, or even I think in that Denver game, you mentioned it earlier, where at there's a lot of final possessions where they had a chance to win the game, and there was one where I think it was end of the first overtime where Ant gets doubled and he takes a little bit longer than needed to, gets it to Julius, who has advantage. And you would think that if that was drawn up to say, hey, Ant's going to draw the double, Julius, you're going to get it, that Julius would have been ready. I mean, Julius isn't a young player, that he should know that if he's going to have the advantage, he either has to go or not. But he seems surprised to get the ball, or at least confused once he got it. So that tells me that he wasn't ready for that, or he wasn't prepared for what was going to happen. So either way, I don't think that it's going to doom the Timberwolves. I don't think Finn should be fired for this. I don't think that it's something that can't be fixed. But I definitely would like to see them address this, because, again, there's probably going to be a lot of clutch time situations. And yes, it's great that they're getting the reps right now. The results aren't great, but hopefully they are getting better. I don't want to say Ant hitting that three was good process. It was a good result. But like you said, sometimes you just kind of hit a dumb shot to win, and that's what happens. I mean, it happens against us all the time, Obi Toppin, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it's more like the team's Achilles heel, or like at least potential Achilles heel, because like if you're really going down the Greek myth of it all, like that was what doomed him. I'm not certain this is what is going to doom I could see the Wolves like facing the Thunder in the series and like they just get beat because the Thunder are a better team. Like
Sure.
they don't in the 4 losses in whatever series, they don't even get to clutch time in those games, and they like so that's but so when I say it's like the team's Achilles heel, like maybe it's the reason the clutch time stuff is the reason they lose, and it's not like Finch deserves like the blame, but like the coaching staff deserves equal blame with the players who deserve equal blame with the front office who designed a roster that wasn't meant to win close games or whatever. Like so, like if you shift it more to like the whole organization, the basketball side of the whole organization, then I guess that would be closer to what I would see.
Hey, if it's a whole organization, I mean, you gotta say that about Glenn Taylor as well too. He was not clutch in his final arbitration play call there because that did not go in his favor either, and he was the majority owner right now. I'm kidding, but I do think you do. I want to agree with your point as well too. Is that we're talking about? I think when we isolate it to final plays, right? Like final possession plays, like those don't look so good. But as to your point, is that the clutch time offense, like we're talking the final 3 minutes here, where it's within 5 points, it has gotten better. I will say that, right? Like you said, they were moving the ball, they were getting better shots out of it. They were putting in advantageous situations where Rudy has a mismatch in the post, and so say the Wolves miss a shot, he's going to be able to get the rebound and put it back, and that's happened a lot. So yeah, I do think overall the clutch time has gotten better. Maybe it's just that the end of the game situation has gotten much better.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's move on to our Apex Alphas. My leader of the pack this week, I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards, just because I know I've ragged on him enough, probably in this pod. I wouldn't necessarily say too much, but certainly when I feel like it's warranted, I've criticized him plenty this season. I felt, and I just kind of think these last 3 or so games he's been, at least as far as April regular season basketball goes, 80 whatever game or 70 whatever games into the season, he's played well. Down the stretch of the Denver game, he was sensational. The first 3 quarters he was bad, but got that one done. Another kind of clutch time disaster until Nikhil gets fouled. But again, I'm almost more concerned about the results. They get a win that if you flip that loss, things look a whole lot different standings wise. We'll talk about that. But I thought he was solid enough in Brooklyn. Scored 28 points on while making 2/3 of his shots. And then in Philly, kind of similar to Denver game, he was sensational down the stretch of the game. Scores 37 points, hits 6 threes. He's doing it all for them, and I just kind of feel like that needs to be mentioned because he's their best player, and if they're going to win playoff series or make the playoffs or whatever, it's going to start with him, obviously, and he's been good enough for them to get him to a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah, I like that pick, and I think that's a good point. I mean, he's clearly pushing through a lot of the pain that he's going through. I mean, he's got that wrap on his right hand. I mean, he twisted his ankle pretty good there in that Nets game, and he's coming back and he's playing through it. And I think Jim Peterson said he talked to him about it, or he talked to at least someone about it, and he was saying that that's a perk of him being so young. It's athletic. I think Finch said that. It's like that's his athleticism coming through. Is that he's able to heal a lot faster than say it was Mike Conley, God forbid. I mean, that would be a rest of the season injury probably for him. And so yeah, I mean, definitely shout out to Ant. I think right now, I mean, we saw in the Sixers game, he hit his 3-pointer number 300 for the Wolves there. And that was really kind of cool to see because that's just such a small like outcome that you think could have happened when we drafted Anthony Edwards, that he was going to hit 300 threes in a season. But not only that, he's leading the NBA in 3-pointers made for the entire season. Now he's still in that tight race with Malik Beasley, who's trailing by only 2 3-pointers right now. So Ant's at 303 for the season. Malik's second with 301. Steph is 293. Now Steph went 1 for 10 today against the Rockets. It really shut him down. He made 1 3-pointer, but you got to admit, you kind of like Ant's chances here to lead the NBA in 3-pointers made this season. Again, with that make number 300, he became the 4th player ever to score 300 threes in a single season. I think Malik Beasley became number 5 today because he's at 301 today. So, yeah, I mean, I think big shout out to Ant. Love to see him continue to dominate in that area of the game. So for me, though, Ryan, I'm going to go with my Apex Alpha, which is Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, we've talked about him earlier. He's been on another level, man. Like the way that he's been playing and, again, dominating maybe against these lesser teams. The Wolves, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this, probably would have lost the game against the Sixers if he didn't play. the way the Wolves are playing, I mean, without Rudy, I feel like he was just so dominant in that game. Even in the clutch at the end, when you think, well, yeah, Rudy probably played good for 3 quarters, so he probably wasn't even on the court at the end when it was close. Like, no, he was there and he was doing a lot. I mean, he's not going to go out there and block Quentin Grimes because that wasn't his assignment at the end of the game, and that's where the Sixers were kind of battling back. But he was defending the paint, well, and he also was cleaning up things on the offensive end. He's just been playing really smart, solid basketball. He's playing with a lot of energy. I think that's the most important thing that we need to see with them. And so, yeah, I mean, just Rudy Gobert. I mean, if he continues this, I think I really like the Wolves' chances. I think we got to the point earlier this year where Nas had a good stretch. We had a point in the year where Julius had a really good stretch, and it was kind of like, okay, well, is Rudy going to be the odd guy out this summer? Like, I know we just signed him to extension, but what if he moved in a Kevin Durant trade or something like that? There's all these kind of murmurings of like, on social media talking about that. But if he plays this way, I mean, there's no way you could trade him. I mean, if you have someone as dominant as Ant on the offensive end of the court and someone as dominant as Rudy on the defensive end of the court, I mean, why wouldn't you want to still continue to pair these two together when they're proving that they can play at such a high level? So big shout out to Rudy Gobert, been so dominant, and that's that rating defensive player of the year that we love to see.
Yeah, and maybe the biggest thing is he just looks healthy. There's been a lot of stretches this year where he just hasn't looked healthy, hasn't looked right. Maybe mental stuff for whatever reason just hasn't been right for him, as is the case with any human from time to time. We can all probably agree with that. But especially this 5-game winning streak, it's been everything that they've needed from him. Obviously, back to just dominating the defensive side, not letting people. He's had some nice matchups, obviously Denver aside, but the other four, three of which are losing teams, like none of them have like a Rudy killer. But even against Jokic I was going to say he did well against Jokic, the guy who had 60 points and a triple-double in the game, but I mean, did as well as anyone does against Jokic. He's just been impressive on both ends of the ball. The rebounding has been sensational. He's been he hasn't had a 2020 game yet for whatever reason. He either had 19 rebounds or 19 points, but he's just been dominating it. And then the offensive stuff has been really good to see. Obviously, like his hands are something that always draw criticism, where he's dropping stuff, he's not catching stuff, and lately that's been fantastic. He's been catching everything, even like when he's been slightly bumped or the pass hasn't been right in the perfect spot, he's gone out of his way to catch it. If catching it brings his momentum, he can't just immediately dunk it, he's took a dribble or take a pump fake to get in a better spot to dunk it or to even make a layup. He's looked extremely good on the offensive end. And I think the team has been finding him more. I don't know if those two things are related, but the short roll passes, which has been a big thing for me all year, they just have to find Rudy on those short rolls, especially Ant, who they're of course going to just blitz him, bring two to the ball, and it's not going to stop. It's going to get even more extreme in the playoffs likely. They just have to find Rudy, and Rudy's done a good job finding plays. I mentioned it, I think 2 episodes ago, where it was in the Detroit game where Rudy bricks a layup, and the next time down, Ant hits him with the same pass, which is just so important. Obviously, if the other team's doing something defensively that isn't making the short roll work, you go away from it. But Rudy missing one layup over a smaller defender isn't in and of itself a good reason to go away from it. And so it's just for as much as Nas isn't playing well, or Randall probably had a tough game against Philly, Rudy playing like this gives this team just such a high ceiling, and they're going to need him to play at a defensive player of the year level, because as good as their offense has been with him out there, you're never going to be this a perfect offense. But he's obviously done fantastic defensively, and they're involving him in the offense enough to keep defenses honest, so they can't just ignore him like teams have done.
Yeah, you can actually argue that the last play of the game where Ant hit that 3 was supposed to go back to Rudy, because the double came off Rudy. You got to imagine that the way that Rudy was playing that game, he was finishing plays. I mean, even in that Sixers game, for the very first time, I feel like Rudy finally hit a one-handed floater in the paint. Because I mean, how many times has he been that? Ant drove right baseline, found Rudy Gobert in the paint, I think just right in front of the free throw line, and Rudy just kind of lobs in this little floater. And I mean, I fully did not expect him to make that, but he did. And so I think that last play was kind of drawn him to potentially get him in a similar situation where Rudy did cut to about the free throw line, and Ant either didn't have a clear line to him to make the pass or just didn't see him. But Rudy was there. He was the only guy that kind of wasn't guarded on that last play. And so, Ant probably should have got it to him. But again, all is well that ends well. So, yeah, I love that. I think on the opposite end, so like we said, Rudy Gobert probably wasn't playing, the highest competition. I mean, he had 8 offensive rebounds against the Sixers yesterday.
Mhm.
He was playing across from the Sixers starting center, who is going to be my prey of the week, which is Adem Bona. Adem Bona got a face full of Ant's bones in his face in that first quarter where Ant went baseline. He beat Yabusele, went up left baseline and just did one of those, like, you call them, like, I call them like trampoline dunks, where it's like he just gets up so fast, just accelerates off the ground, and his head is at the rim, and he tosses one in before like Bona could even realistically get a chance to even try and block him or foul him. So he just kind of tries to shrink out of the play, but he's already in the picture, and yeah, he just threw out a huge dunk. It was kind of a last minute business decision by him, and so it's definitely one of those dunks that makes you stand up. Where it happened, I was like, oh, and I like stood up, and my wife was like, "Well, what happened? What happened?" And I was like, "Oh, dude, Ann just like threw one down." And so it was great to see. And again, Adam Bona, welcome to the graveyard of Ants posters this season, because Ants had a couple of sneaky, really good posters this year, and I think yesterday was another one.
Yeah, kind of similar angle to the Utah Watanabe one. A lot of dunks kind of come in that same little action where you get like a backdoor pass and someone rotates over and you dunk on them. So similar to that one, like you said, the business decision from Bona probably prevented it from being an all timer. But yeah, it's just funny. Like half of your prey of the weeks this year have felt like Ant dunk on attempts, which is fantastic. My prey of the week, another kind of common occurrence here, D'Angelo Russell. Oh man, earlier in the season he said on like a podcast like the Wolves could use me, and so he's 0 of 6, 0 points in the Brooklyn game, just brutal. I'm like worried that like this is his final NBA stop. Maybe that's a bit. I mean, maybe I guess another tanking team can try him out and he could lead the tank squad. If I don't know if Brooklyn's trying to win next year, maybe the Brooklyn will just bring him back, and maybe if 5 people come to the game because they enjoy D'Angelo Russell, it's worth the contract, I guess. But yeah, just the sliding doors moment of trading him for Mike, Nikhil, and 3 second-round picks, which I believe one of those second-round picks is this year's Utah second, which is going to be the first selection of the second round. I don't know if you want to go back even further than that, the sliding doors of the Wiggins trade. I don't know. I mean, Kuminga, I'm not sure if Warriors fans are in love with Jonathan Kuminga right now, but yeah, it's weird to think about just because he had some nice moments in the playoffs for the Lakers, honestly. Like when they made the West Finals, he had a really nice series, one of those series, but I mean, that's just D'Lo. I'm not sure. I mean, good for him for getting this far in the NBA. Certainly an impressive career in this in the regular people's standards, but yeah, he was brutal out there against the Wolves.
I'll give you a date, Ryan. December 13th, 2024. The Minnesota Timberwolves hosted the Los Angeles Lakers in that game. And D'Lo was starting for or I think he was maybe off the bench. He was still on the Lakers still back then, December. So that was just, again, a couple months ago. But at the start of the second half, D'Lo hit 2 shots in a row. He didn't make any field goals in the first half. In the second half, he made 2 field goals. And then he went 0 for 6 when the game was in the balance at the end of it. And a number of them were wide open looks, like 3, like no one was even going to go contest them. And so, yeah, that infamous quote that just continues to feed generations that honestly I felt held back in Minnesota quote. I mean, that just continues to live. I mean, like, come on, dude. Like, this guy must have some of the worst self-awareness in terms of who he thinks he is as a basketball player versus who he actually is. Now, again, like you said, he's an NBA player. He's made a lot of money. He's made an all-star team as an injury replacement one time, like somehow. I mean, I remember when he first got to Brooklyn, he's like, I'm never going to take for granted playing this type of free basketball. Just kind of like trying to zing one at the Lakers there on his way out the door as well too. Where it's like, dude, like there's a reason you were part of that. There's a reason why Dorian Finney-Smith is like playing way more winning basketball than you are right now for the Lakers, dude. And he just lacks that connection there. So again, yeah, against the Wolves, I think, did he even play in the second half? Like, I don't even remember seeing him out there. I mean, it was just Yeah, it was I forgot what podcast he was on, but he was talking with Cat, and he was saying like,
Right.
"Oh, the Wolves could use us. They could use guys like us."
And I don't
It's like,
remember. I don't remember Cat endorsing that. I don't know what he
no, no,
said.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I know like Cat's his boy, and like they're
Sure.
homies and whatnot. That's fine, but it definitely is one of those things where like Cat in his head. I mean, he's got to know, like, man, like, all right, dude, like, are you serious? Like, the Wolves are doing okay without him right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah,
Well, and Cat's not the maybe. I don't know. Self-awareness maybe isn't the right word for Cat, but like if Cat can see through you, then like that's not necessarily like the Cat's not like the most. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, if Cat can recognize that you're not I'm not a genuine guy, then I think the Cat's pretty genuine. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna punt on this.
Right. I would say this. I'll say this is that like for as much as people like love to pile on Cat, like, oh, Cat sucks. He's he's flailing. He's always like trying to draw fouls. He's just too soft or whatever the case may be. Like, yeah, there's an entire armies, like nations worth of fans, of D'Lo fans, like stands that like love D'Lo and all the ice in the veins thing. Like, I guess maybe he's very kid friendly or whatever the case is, but people still love D'Lo and he still has like these loyal followers out there, while like Cat just seemingly continues to just get shit on no matter what team he's on, no matter what market he's on. I mean, he's gotten a little bit better of an image now he's been on New York, but I think even then he's kind of been the target of some of the criticism. Where meanwhile D'Lo's like, oh man, he just needs to find the right fit. D'Lo just hasn't found the right fit yet. Where it's like, no, dude, he's literally playing on a tanking team, and I get they just have good solid teammates or quality of teammates out there with them. But dude, I mean, like, what else does he need? You get to play again with LeBron. You get to play with Steph Curry. You get to play with Anthony Edwards. Like, how many more like great A1 superstars you need to play next to before it's like, all right, this just isn't meant. You're not meant to be more than just a bench role player.
Right. Yeah. Well, the Wolves will always have the Clipper playing game with
Yeah,
D'Lo.
this is true. Yeah.
He was very good in what ended up being the Pat Bev on the table game. So we'll take that memory and maybe just wipe away the subsequent Memphis series where by the end of it Jordan McLaughlin was taking his minutes. But I think now's a good time to kind of move into standings talk. It's obviously the Wolves games themselves are the most important, but honestly, a lot of these other games are just as important. So right now, the Wolves are in a 4 or 5-way tie in the loss column. So as I pull up the standings here, they have all of these teams have 32 losses. The Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Wolves, and the Grizzlies. So that's 5 teams all tied for 4th in the loss column. Denver does have an extra win, so they're half game up. If those teams remain tied, it would come down to a 5-way tiebreaker. And the Wolves would likely have that tiebreaker. I did look into it a bit more. They have not clinched winning that tiebreaker. Them and the Clippers are tied for the best like round robin records. So the Wolves, if the Wolves beat the Grizzlies, they would clinch that tiebreaker. Or if the Clippers lose to Golden State at the end of the year, they would clinch that tiebreaker. So not quite clinched, but either way, the Wolves would be, if all of these teams are tied, the Wolves would be in a 4-5 series against the Clippers with home court advantage, riding on that those games I just talked about. But yeah, tonight the Nuggets lose their fourth in a row. The Warriors lose to the Rockets, which bumps the Wolves down to 7 for a bit. Not necessarily worried about that necessarily because there's so much to play out. But yeah, if the Wolves win out, they're going to be the 4 seed. They're going to have home court advantage, or at least if the Lakers fall apart and lose 3 games, they'll be the 3 seed. But yeah, everything is in front of them. If the Wolves win 3 out of 4 and the one win is against, or one of the 3 wins is against Memphis, they're darn near clinching the top 6 seed. I did look up. Coming into the night, the Wolves had a 71.3% chance of getting out of the play-in. That is going to go up with the Warriors and Nuggets losing. They had an 8.5% chance at a 3 seed. That is likely going to go down with the Lakers beating OKC. But then the FanDuel odds, which are up to date, out of those teams that are tied at 32 losses, the Wolves, according to FanDuel, are the least likely to end up in the play-in. So the Grizzlies and Clippers are the most likely teams to be in the in the plan. The Nuggets are more or less tied with the Clippers for likelihood to be in the plan, and then there's a gap with the Warriors next. So, and then the Wolves. So the Wolves and then the Lakers, who are two losses ahead of this group of teams. So the Vegas is saying that the Wolves are less likely to be in the play-in tournament than the Warriors. And to be honest, the two biggest factors here are the Wolves have a lot of these tiebreakers, especially with these multi-way tiebreakers with the Nuggets and Clippers, who they both swept. So those are really helping them. And then they didn't get swept by anyone. Obviously, the Warriors took 3 or 4 from them, and Memphis they're 0-2 against, and they still have a game to play. So losing to Memphis, really, the big takeaway: this Memphis game on Thursday is gigantic. If they win it, it's hard to imagine them not being in the play-in. And if they lose it, they gotta win it. They gotta win the other 3 games, or else they're likely looking at the play-in.
Yeah, there's some Da Vinci Code stuff here. Like you really need a piece of paper and a pencil here to kind of write down. And I've tried to do my best on Blue Sky to try and outline some of this. But again, there's so much change happening every day. I mean, I think a week ago, if you mentioned to me or if you brought up the idea to me like, hey, what if Denver kind of falls all the way down? I'd be like, yeah, that's unlikely. Very unlikely that Nuggets fall all the way into
Memphis
this.
too.
Yeah, Memphis as well too. Where like a couple weeks ago, they were probably in play for a 2 seed still at that time, and they've both really tumbled down. So it just shows you how fast things can change. As much as we want to say, oh well, the Wolves are going to be a lock to try and make it in the top 6 or even top 5. So much can still change in this next week, even against a lighter schedule. So I will say though, yeah, I think the biggest like development in this last week at least was Denver really joining the fray. I mean, yeah, like you said, that 0-4 against Minnesota helps them so much if they end up in any type of tiebreak situation with them, because again, rarely do any of the other teams have a 4-0 sweep against each other. And so I think, at most we need to continue to root for Golden State to lose. Obviously, that's who we have the worst record against,
right.
and we need to root for Denver to fall as much as possible as well, or to keep pace with us. I think we've been kind of dragging along the Clippers this whole time, hoping that they keep us in that tiebreaker 3-way or more tiebreaker really helps us. But again, if Denver joins, it's like you said, it's all but over for us to be in that play. And so yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to kind of follow through. I want to urge a lot of fans, myself included, not to live and die with every game situation. I know for me now that fantasy basketball has been over and I can kind of watch it a little bit more freely with just my Wolves cap on now. It's been really frustrating. Like, dude, how are the Warriors winning so many games? I'm getting so frustrated at every other player on the other team. But again, every night, like even tonight, when we didn't think like, oh yeah, well the Warriors will probably be able to handle the Rockets, or the Thunder will probably be able to handle the Lakers. Like you just never know. So yeah, it's gonna be really, really exciting. Yeah, that Grizzlies is pretty much a must-win game, but they want to avoid that guarantee themselves a ticket outside of the play-in tournament. So it's going to be really excited to see. I think the Wolves have so much freaking narrative to go into that as well, too. Like, if we worry about them playing down, I mean, like, they gave away those 2 games against Memphis. Like, those are games that the Wolves should have won. It's not like they got blown out by Memphis or anything like that. They literally just kind of shat the bed, like in true 2022 fashion, where they had a huge lead or had a considerable lead heading into the fourth quarter, and they just kind of fell apart. And so I know John Ant love going up against each other, and I know like Jaren Jackson, Rudy Gobert kind of have that defensive player of the year battle going on, but you got to like the Wolves odds to come in there with a lot of energy and taking it very, very seriously, because that's what they'll need to do.
Yep. And it's honestly, it's kind of crazy. I don't think we're gonna have even like last year. Last year, you could have coming down the whole week. You knew it was going to come down to about 3 different teams the Wolves could face in the postseason. You're not going to. There's a good chance that like on the last night of the season, the Wolves could theoretically match up with 4 different teams in the playoffs. Not to mention falling out into the play-in, and could have 2 different opponents in the play-in or whatever.
Right.
Like there's a lot to be determined. But I think the bigger thing is if the Wolves take care of business. I don't know what they'll be favored obviously against the 2 tanking teams, but even if they probably in all likelihood, they need to split these 2 hard games and beat the 2 tanking teams, and they'll be in. If they want, and if they win out, they'll have home court advantage, which is crazy to say because even a couple weeks ago, it just seemed all but certain that the Warriors were just going to because of the tiebreaker, were going to be a little bit too hard to catch, especially after the 2 brutal losses to Indy and New Orleans. It just kind of fell over. And the Nuggets and Grizzlies, kind of the bottom falling out with them, have given the Wolves life.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote, right, I selected the top 6 seed as one of my praise of the week a couple weeks ago, but looks like I was maybe a little bit too early to make the call on that one as well, too, because, yeah, I mean, anything could happen. And so, I think, Ryan, that takes me to my 2 words, at least going into this. My 2 words to describe the current state of the Wolves is 2 games. These next 2 games, again, this is at Milwaukee on Wednesday, and then, or on Tuesday, and then they have at Memphis on Thursday. So my 2 words are 2 games, because these 2 games will be the biggest games of the Wolves this season, especially specifically that Thursday game against the Grizzlies, because the Bucks, they haven't been very inspiring. They've obviously lost Dame for probably the most of this regular season, if not the entire rest of the postseason, with his blood clot issue. Rushing him back would be just completely like an inhumane thing for the Milwaukee Bucks to try and do, or at least for Dame to do for his own personal health. But they'll be playing against Giannis, who's been trying to do everything to try and keep that franchise together. And if all indications, are for the murmurs, within the locker rooms, that I mean, who knows how long Giannis wants to stick around for this iteration of the Doc Rivers Bucks. So I think he'll be very, very motivated to fight for this game. I mean, he took this last game off tonight, and so there was a second of a back-to-back. So who knows if he actually does have an injury or not. But again, he'll be extra rested for the Wolves on Tuesday. But yeah, these 2 games I think will determine the fate of the Wolves this season, or at least for the regular season.
Yep. And my 2 words are final week. I'm just kind of ready for the playoffs at this point. Obviously, like you mentioned, these 2 games are gigantic. It's kind of funny for me. I'm going to cover these 3 of these last 4 regular season games, and the one I'm not is the biggest one. But significantly cheaper to travel out to Milwaukee from Minnesota than it is to Memphis. So that's how that goes. But yeah, Memphis game is huge. We'll have some sort of coverage for that game on Thursday. And the subsequent back-to-back with Brooklyn on Friday as well. But yeah, for anything else, Leo?
No, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, we're going to break down, Ryan and I will be back next week on Sunday as well, too, after the regular season wraps up, to kind of break down who the Wolves are going to be looking at. And then also coming up soon, just kind of mark on your own calendars, the WNBA draft is coming up next Monday as well, too. So the Lynx do have a pick for that. It should be a little bit interesting to see what happens, and if the Dallas Wings actually select Paige Becker as number 1 or not. So
yeah, well, this pod is primarily the Wolves, but kind of similar. The last Lynx playoff run, we did talk about especially the finals, but all the playoffs. I think we'll give a 5 minutes at least to whoever the Lynx end up there. I don't think they're going to be able to swindle Paige Beckers away from anyone, but I guess if Luka Doncic can be on the Lakers, then who knows? But yeah, crazy week this week. The Wolves could finish it at 8th. They could finish at 3rd. That's crazy. Likely, more than likely, they'll be 4 to 6 or 7. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. For Leo, I'm Ryan. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening. Get home, drive safe.
Go Wolves.
Ayoo!